Hey guys, Eric here from Mindful Trader. This video is about why I don't trade the news. I have a stock market trade alert service that I run here through Mindful Trader, and the trades that I do and that I alert, they're not based on me reading the news and kind of choosing how to trade based on the news I read. That's what I mean when I say I don't trade the news. Rather, what I do is I look at historical uh, price information going back 20 years plus, and I look for tendencies or patterns or things that reoccur with a high probability. And I trade based on those things. I do not look at the news and get my information that way. So I'm going to show you an example here. I am in Thinkorswim right now, which is the trading platform I use, and QS is the ticker that I have open. Apparently they make batteries, and the batteries can be used in electric vehicles. And this thing is already an interesting looking chart, but there was some news somewhere back around here, I know, but then there was news right in here, and you can see this thing was already going up, and then some news hit and this thing exploded. And I know plenty of people, tons of people, where right when they hear a news item, right when they see it hit the press, they jump all over it. They get to the ticker right away, and they're looking to play the momentum, or just to guess how the market's going to react to the news and to ride as much of the ride as possible. And you can see there's a lot of movement potentially in here if you are right about which way it goes. I don't trade that way though. That's not what I do. I look at the price movement itself, and I wait until it sets up in a way where there's a proven historical edge to trading it. And so this chart itself, the actual price movement on the chart here, this looks interesting to me. This catches my eye. But at no point, if I'm looking at this chart, would I read the news and try to interpret the news to determine, am I going to trade, and what position would I take, and that sort of stuff. So I don't read news articles. In fact, I don't even have a news feed that I read on a regular basis. So sometimes the way I find out news about given stocks in the market are when friends tell me about trades that they've done, because I don't even read the news myself, because I don't have any need for it with the way that I trade. I trade based on price pressure, which way prices are going, and what that price pressure means based on historical data research. So why don't I trade the news? You can see here, this was perhaps a big opportunity. Well, there's a couple of reasons. One is that news items are subject to interpretation. So I saw many cases with Amazon as an example, and I mentioned this on my website as well, and I'll make up a hypothetical example. Let's say that they have an earnings report, okay, which is a type of news item, and they announced that they had a $1 billion loss for the quarter, let's say. The price could end up shooting up, even though it sounds on the surface like this really negative news. It absolutely could shoot up, and with Amazon, it has many times. The price has gone up when they announce earnings that are for a loss. And to me, that's a great example of how you never know for sure how the market's going to interpret the news. Now, there could be a lot of reasons for it to go up, but for that example, but the bottom line is you just never know for sure what the response is going to be. You know, it can be hard to guess. I also just lived through the coronavirus. I'm filming this late in 2020, and the coronavirus crash in 2020, the market crash, was almost comical, where there might be a government intervention, and they rush to go inject money into the economy, and somehow that's interpreted with a price drop. The market price of for the market index will drop based on that news. And there were just so many head scratching reactions in the market, and it made me very happy that I don't trade the news, because it's all subject to interpretation. And there's so many players in the market, you just don't know for sure how the news is going to be interpreted and who's going to be actively trading it. So that's one thing, is that it's just hard to interpret the news. Whereas with numbers, the numbers are the numbers. They're black and white. They're cold and they're hard. They are what they are. And that's one of the reasons I love math in general, and why I like doing this sort of quantitative research. So the other thing is that with news items, they're also hard to test. So I mentioned before, I really like testing the strategies I use. For any given trading strategy, if I can't test it, I'm not trading it. I want to be able to test against history whether or not it really was profitable or not. Otherwise, I feel like I'm trading blind and I'm just guessing and hoping. And I don't want to trade like that. I want to trade based on facts, on stuff that I've been able to personally verify through my data research has a historical edge. And so with news items, they're very hard to test. So if you take an example, and I had one like this on my website, but here's an example. Let's say it's an earnings release, and the company announced that they had a loss, but the loss was a small loss, and maybe they had sales growth. So the overall news announcement has complexity. There's multiple elements, and the magnitude of the elements within the news announcement vary. It's a small loss, not a big loss. So, you think about, well, how would you go about testing what the impact is of a news item going back in history? You'd have to, I guess, categorize the types of news items to segregate what type of news it even is. And then, in this case, this is a complex news announcement. Multiple items within the announcement and multiple degrees of magnitude. And that's hard to test. Are you gonna have a category for news announcements where the earnings are down but the sales are going up? Okay, that's kind of a pretty narrow bucket to categorize. But then you have to even narrow it down more based on the magnitude, and even the magnitude is still subject to interpretation. So it makes it really, really gray and mushy, which is the exact opposite of what I want when I test. I want cold, hard facts. I want stuff that there's no interpretation, there's no wondering, there's no assumptions. It's just you look at the data and the data tells you very clearly what happened. And with news items, it's hard to run tests where you can get that sort of information. One other thing about news items, let's say you wanted to look at news items and say, how about every time there was a new product announced by a company, what happened? Well, you have to go through the annals of history and somehow source all these different news announcements to try to figure that out. And you have to read them and interpret these news announcements as you're doing your research, just to figure out, is this the right type of news announcement? Is there something else to the news announcement? And can you even find all the news announcements? So there's just all these pieces of complexity with it, versus if you just test price data historically, that is right at our fingertips. We can go and grab historical price data all over the place. You can get it from Yahoo Finance for free, at least on a day-by-day price point basis. So you can get price data, and that's accessible, and it's kind of universal. We all know what the prices were. It's not subject to interpretation, and it's all right here at our fingertips. It's just a matter of running statistical analysis to find where these edges lie. That's what I do. So I don't rush to find news articles. I don't see a news article and rush to figure out how I can trade it. I just wait until a price pattern shows up that I know historically has edge, that I can lean on, that I can rely on, that I've tested through and through, and I know it's a highly probable chance of it repeating a particular price pattern. So I hope that helps explain the way that I trade and why I don't trade the news. If you have questions, you can contact me anytime. My email address is eric, ERIC, @mindfultrader.com. Thanks, guys.